Hello and welcome to China Focus. I'm Shelley Zhang. Could China have too much money? There are increasing concerns over China's money supply or a possible oversupply. That's after inflation picked up more than expected in December. Now, that was a result of a major stimulus brought about due to the 2012 economic slowdown in the country. But what's the effect of the stimulus and a possible oversupply in money? Here today to talk about the issue is Chen Zhifei and Jason Ma. Thanks for joining us. Now, let's talk about, why is there a concern over having too much money?
Well, having too much money will be a typical case that will set you up for a subsequent inflation headache, because the typical classical sort of scenario for inflation would be too much more money chasing too few goods. So if you pump money into circulation, that will create that kind of a scenario. Eventually, you will have a inflation problem. What you just described is China's oversupply of M2. M2 is the most well-accepted definition for money supply because it includes all the hard currency, coins, be it coins or bills, as well as short-term demand deposit. So these are most accessible sources for you to get money.
So a short-term demand deposit is what I put in the bank? Is
that
what
you put
it
in the bank and you can withdraw at any moment. Mm-hmm. And M3 would include another item that is long-term demand deposit. But this kind of demand deposit may not be that easy for people to withdraw because they carry interest and people don't want to sacrifice while they withdraw prematurely. So that's make M2 the most standard sort of definition or
so it's
measure.
Kind of like liquid money.
Liquid measure for money supply. And we're looking at China having, until as of now, money supply to the tune of 100 trillion Chinese yuan, which is like the double of its national economy GDP. In comparison with America's 80% of such ratio, which is really startling.
So is 50% an unhealthy number, like economically speaking?
190.
Doubling, sorry.
Yeah, doubling. I mean, their GDP is like almost twice of their GDP, the amount of money available in the society. So everyone is saying that U.S. is printing money like crazy. Now they have QE3, but indeed, the amount of U.S. money is only about 65% of U.S. GDP, and under the 80%, which is considered as a reasonable amount of money, considered as international MIF. So basically, U.S. comparing to China is very prudent in the sense of delivering money, but the Chinese just have too much money over there.
So what's like the practical effect of that? Like on people in China, you have too much money in circulation. What does that mean for your average person?
And a lot of kind of bubbles. I mean, China have a real estate bubble, which everyone knows. They also have this kind of craft bubble. They have a kind of all kinds of strange things to sell billions of dollars, kind of renminbis. I mean, which is an indication of too much money chasing a lot of strange things.
It's like a water faucet. The only difference is water flows in the pipeline is not water, but the money. Yeah. So you turn on the faucet, the central government would do that, and then there are a lot of money flowing around the country, so you can go on any kind of investment binge. Whether you be a small government or a big locality, you have ready access to the money. However, this kind of privilege is only reserved for government officials and government enterprises. At the same time, I think we have talked about the crunch facing the small enterprises, private enterprise owners, who are always pushed to the back of the burner in terms of getting the money. So we're seeing a very vibrant activity in a state-owned investment sector, like the investment in infrastructure, highway construction, high-speed rail system, and all kinds of showpiece trotted out by local governments. But we are seeing very quiet reactions or benefits from the entrepreneurs. So there is a sharp contrast.
So what's is there a danger in having this oversupply? I mean, you're talking about things that classically are GDP growing things in China, these projects and things like that. So why is there a concern now over that?
Of course, I mean, too much money means long-term inflation. I mean, inflation is a way like people lose their life standard. And it's exactly what is happening right now. When kind of they have this slowed kind of GDP, which is not slow, 7 point something, which is considered very, very good in Western term. But in China, for some reason, consider that something as justification to dump huge amount of money to this huge amount of kind of infrastructure for the bridge turnover, kind of road turnover for this kind of project, and to dump so much money, and end up the inflation kind of begin to pick up, and basically, which is like people buying the consequence of this whole thing.
So what kind of inflation are we talking about? I mean, are we
right
talking
now
about...
it's not high, it's 2.57, which is not high at all, but it get to the trend, because right now people expect it should only be 2003, but it's 2.7, which is already out of people's expectation. And this gave you an upper trend, because now the Chinese New Year is coming, and that's the moment where everything kind of seasonally should be higher priced. So, and also the worst thing is the food is always the sector that have the highest kind of increase in price. Almost like 2/3 of the inflation is in food. So that hit the lower class harder than any other kind of
Bear in
section.
mind, we're talking about a developing country, and for average citizen, they have to spend more than 1/3 of their income on food and similar basic necessities. In comparison with the United States, people spend less than 10% of their income on such need. So 2% or some kind of inflation to the food would cause big social reaction, causing panic. That's widespread. But that's just one thing, inflation. I just want to change the gear a little bit and talking about another facet of this fallout, that is the reinforcing of the inflation and collapse of the whole economy. Because we are talking about very ill-advised, very poor judgment when it comes to investments. These investments should not have been done if you are entrepreneur. If you have any sense of business risk.
You mean the money that goes into these investments?
Exactly.
Jason, bridge to nowhere you're talking
bridge
about?
to nowhere. So eventually they'll come back to haunt us, to haunt those Chinese. So the day of reckoning is nearing. And when the rate of return is far less than cost of capital, the bank will be in trouble. Because the bank lend out the money to those government officials, to those state enterprises, and the return will be less than the interest. That's exactly what happened to China's showpiece high-speed rail system.
Right.
Then what's going on? The bank will be in a default of loans, and those enterprises. The bank will be caught in the bind. So what is going to happen is the government will have to supply more money to those banks. So this kind of runs like a vicious cycle. And where is the money from? The government will have to pump more money into the system because they need the sacrifice from average citizen from their deposit bank to earn interest.
How do the average citizens sacrifice in this case?
Because your money is in the bank, and then constantly your money losing buying power. Definitely, you are losing
because
real
inflation
value of money.
And the deposit rate is artificially low.
Right.
The government set the rate.
Last year, when they have this huge amount of kind of initiation of the local infrastructure projects. And we talked about it. We said at that moment, their PMI, which is below 50, which is means their
Purchasing Manager Index,
which is shrinking. Yeah. And we said, after this whole project start, we will definitely see increase of PMI, which is above to 50, but we will see inflation. And so that's exactly happening. I mean, like in the past 3 months, you do see this PMI increase, BR50, and all the kind of Western stock was cheering, and then stock market even responds.
People are saying that means the Chinese economy is getting better.
I mean, they say, but you clearly see that's not a healthy way. I mean, basically, this kind of people dying over there, they inject something, and then people begin to move their leg, and the people are cheering, oh, this people is healthy. No, that's not. That's kind of a wrong way to treat this patient. I mean,
so I mean, a lot of this is because of the kind of command economy that they're able to inject money into the system in the way they are. They're able to kind of make banks give out these loans through the stimulus project. Right. But what happens, a lot of people are kind of not worried about this, right, in the West, I would say, because...
Well, it's actually as much as a political issue as an economic issue. because we're talking about social kind of problems associated with this kind of fallout. When people suffer, Western people don't see that. And again, the Westerners found it would be in their interest that China had a stable economy. You have so many investment projects there. Apple make all those Apple products there. So they don't want the countries any kind of chaos or uncontrollable situation.
Won't there be kind of instability if people lose their savings?
They found that only when China has high GDP, only when its economy on a go-go kind of mode, when the economy can produce enough spots for employment. And the rough estimate is China needs to employ how many, need to create 8 million new jobs each year just to make it suffice to meet the new demand. So if the economy is down,
care about that. I mean, if they really care about employment rate, they should encourage those small kind of private sectors. But no, almost all the money dumped to local government, dumped to the government kind of owned, state-run big industry. So on the surface, they constantly say, "Oh, we need this huge amount of kind of GDP to really kind of make sure everyone have a job." But meanwhile, all their policy point to direct all the benefit to their government, to their kind of.
Let me ask, can it go on forever?
No, but we have to really take it as a global phenomenon because China has been inducted in the so-called the BRIC Club. The new emerging economies. And we have found that China does have a lot of purchasing power around the world. When Chinese economy dipped last year, all kinds of commodity prices come down. Copper, coal, and iron ore. So a lot of economies, a couple of them suffered. Brazil, Australia. So people are talking about China being one of the drivers along with the United States in propelling the world economy. So they don't want the Chinese economy to get overheated because they know it will collapse, but they don't want to get into stagnation either.
So let me ask last question because we're almost out of time here. But there was a meeting recently where like the People's Bank of China chairman said something about how they're going to do like a prudent monetary policy, and a lot of people are saying, okay, so the Chinese officials, they're aware of the problem with inflation and with overheating, with oversupply money. They're going to draw back a little, tighten a bit, and a lot of people have a lot of faith that they're always going to be able to basically stay one step ahead of the game. Do you think that's going to happen? Oh,
yeah, I mean, always they are in this cycle. I mean, once they stop pumping money as crazy as they are doing now, the economy is just going to go to this kind of very slow mode, and a lot of social issues begin pump up. So basically, this is a kind of vicious cycle. Will force them to go back to this dumping money mode. So everything will come back, and then the consequences, people really, Chinese people pay the bill. I mean, they pay the bill with their saving account.
So there's no way to break out of this cycle.
It's hard. As long as the system there, as long as there are also cheerleaders on the sidelines, because the Western economy also find Chinese economy could help out when the whole world is in the economic sluggishness.
Okay, well, thank you both for joining us today and talking about this issue. And thanks for watching. For more on this and other issues in China, join us at ntd.tv.